Today, we're going to break down a global economic crisis. It all kicked off with a regional war back in 2026, but it spiraled fast, sending shockwaves across, well, every single continent. Let's get into how it all went down.
Look, it's hard to overstate just how big of a deal this was. When you have an organization like the International Energy Agency using words like that, you know it's serious. This wasn't just another temporary price spike. This was a fundamental crack in the world's energy system.
And that's really the core of the story we're unpacking here. You see, the military action was the trigger, absolutely. But the economic fallout, that was the true global event. It was a chain reaction, a cascading failure that touched everything from the gas pump in your car to the factories on the other side of the world.
Okay, so to really get how a regional conflict managed to go global so incredibly quickly, we have to start right at the epicenter, both geographically and economically. And it all comes down to a single critical choke point. It's a totally fair question, right? How can one narrow little stretch of water hold so much power over the entire global economy? Well, the answer is all about what flows through it, day in and day out.
I mean, just look at these numbers. The sheer volume of energy passing through this one spot is just staggering. The Strait of Hormuz is basically the world's main energy artery. We're talking about a fifth of all global oil and a fifth of all liquefied natural gas. It's not just important, it's absolutely indispensable.
And then, just like that, the artery was severed. With that one move, the global economy was instantly thrown into total chaos. So with that choke point shut down, the first domino to topple was, you guessed it, the region right next door. Let's look at the systemic collapse in the Gulf nations, because their entire economic model was built on one simple assumption, that this waterway would always be open. You know, for decades, the story we all heard about the Gulf was this picture of ultra-modern, super stable, and totally safe hubs for global business. But the war just ripped that narrative to shreds, revealing this deep fragility just hiding beneath the glittering surface. That whole idea, it just shattered almost overnight.
And this is where you see just how interconnected and fragile everything was. It wasn't just about stopping oil and gas from getting out. It also meant that critical imports couldn't get in, like 70% of the region's food. And the water supply, almost all of it from desalination, was suddenly at risk. Planes stopped flying, and the entire service economy just imploded as expats and tourists fled. It was a complete systemic breakdown.
And if you want to put a price tag on that collapse, here it is. A UN study figured it was a hit of up to $194 billion to the GDP of Arab nations. I mean, that's just a catastrophic economic blow, something that would take years, maybe even decades to recover from. But this shockwave didn't just stop in the Gulf. Not even close. Let's follow it as it travels north, slamming right into Europe, which suddenly found itself staring down its second massive energy crisis in less than a decade. And here's the thing. Europe was already in a tough spot. A really harsh winter had left their gas storage dangerously low. We're talking just 30% full. So when all that LNG from Qatar suddenly got cut off, the market just panicked. Gas prices almost doubled, and the European Central Bank, which was all set to cut interest rates, had to slam on the brakes and do the exact opposite. So you've got this nightmare scenario, this perfect storm for something economists absolutely dread, stagflation. It's this really nasty mix, the worst of both worlds, right? The economy is stalling out and people are losing jobs, but at the same time, prices for everything are still going up. It's an economic trap, and it was now the biggest threat facing the whole continent.
And you have to understand, this was way bigger than just paying more to heat your home. This was a threat to Europe's entire industrial core. Industries that use a ton of energy, like chemical plants and steel mills, saw their costs skyrocket. It sparked real fears that factories might close down for good, threatening Europe's ability to compete on the world stage long term.
All right, from Europe, let's keep following this economic shockwave as it spreads to Asia, and this is the region that was arguably the most exposed of all.
And this is the moment where the global crisis really hit the streets. All those abstract numbers you see on a trading screen, this is where they became real life. Huge long lines of motorbikes waiting for fuel in Hanoi. Signs at stations in Thailand just saying, out of diesel. This was the real human cost.
And the reason Asia got hit so hard is pretty simple, really. Just extreme dependency. For a powerhouse like India, the numbers are absolutely mind-boggling. 75% of its oil and almost 60% of its LNG came right through that choke point. And it's a similar story for China, Japan, and South Korea. Their entire economic engines were basically plugged directly into the Strait of Hormuz.
Things got so bad so fast, the governments had to start taking some pretty drastic steps. In the Philippines, they actually declared a national state of energy emergency. I mean, that tells you just how close to the edge this crisis pushed everyone.
So now, let's pull the lens all the way back and look at the worldwide consequences. Because what this whole event proves is that in our hyper-connected world, a shock this big, well, it leaves no market untouched. Of course, the financial markets reacted in a heartbeat. The fear of inflation and total supply chain chaos sparked a massive global sell-off. Now, these percentages might not look huge on their own, but we are talking about hundreds of billions of dollars in value that just, poof, got wiped out in a matter of days as investors ran for cover.
And this is where you start to see the hidden wiring of our global economy, right? This crisis was never just about oil. It turns out the Gulf is also a massive supplier of sulfur, which is crucial for fertilizer, and helium for making semiconductors, and aluminum for, well, everything from cars to soda cans. The conflict choked off all of these supplies, sending prices for food, electronics, and countless other goods through the roof.
And finally, to put one single number on the energy cost, one CEO estimated that 1 billion barrels of oil production would ultimately be lost because of the war. 1 billion barrels. It's a number so big it's hard to even picture, but it perfectly captures the sheer scale of this whole thing. So this whole story leaves us with a really critical question, one we all have to think about. The 2026 war showed us how a single conflict in one spot can trigger failures literally all over the globe, from a fuel pump in Vietnam to a factory in Germany. It really makes you wonder, in a world this tangled together, can any crisis ever truly stay local?